Coming up on episode 175 of Create If Writing, I'm talking about how to sustain your book sales and yourself.
I can't go back to sleep, it's almost light. These restless thoughts have kept me up again tonight.
Hello and welcome to Create If Writing. I'm your host, Kirsten Oliphant, and this is the podcast for you, an author who wants to sell more books without being smarmy. I'm so excited to be back with you. If you are a longtime listener, you know that I've taken a break for a couple of months actually, and we're now into 2020. Woohoo! And if you're someone who's catching up and binge listening, then you did notice a difference. I'm happy to have you here too. So as I'm recording this, it's January 2020, and I think it's super fitting that I'm talking about sustainability because I actually wrote the blog post that goes along with this podcast episode back in, I guess, October or November, whenever I took a break. And the recording, my kids have been messing with my microphone, and the recording it did not happen. The mic was actually clicked off, which seems like the kind of thing you should check every time as a podcaster, but my kids aren't allowed in my office and things are always just how they're supposed to be, except of course when they aren't. And so I didn't have time to re-record the episode, which helped me realize I don't actually have time right now to do some things. So I took a break from my weekly emails, the quick fix, and also the podcast, but I'm glad to be back. We're going to be talking about sustainability, and I have some insight into that now that I have taken a break to sustain myself. And actually, a big part of that was sustaining my book sales and the need to do that. So I'm going to see how many times I can say sustaining in this episode. A couple of quick announcements, and then I will get into more of them at the end in more detail because I want to dive right into the information. But we are back. I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing one or an episode every week or an episode every other week. So we're just going to see what I can handle this year. You should be receiving the quick fix again starting this week. And if you're not signed up for my weekly email, it's full of resources, tips, and other information for authors. You can get that at createifwriting.com/quick fix. And the big announcement is that I'm actually getting back to doing some training this year and some paid work helping you, an author, sell more of your books without being smarmy. So you can find out more about that at the end of this episode or go to createifwriting.com/workshop. Okay, so let's talk about sustainability. I really thought it was pretty humorous that in an episode about sustainability, I wasn't able to re-record it, which helped me understand my life wasn't sustainable. So life lessons coming all around. If you want to actually see the blog post for this, you can go to createifwriting.com/175. I always have detailed show notes that are not just a list of random things, but actually a real written blog post about the episode. Okay, so when I had to really dial back to remember what I was thinking when I first wrote this post that was supposed to be this podcast episode. So it might have shifted a little in terms of what I say now, in terms of what was in the post. Nothing is, there will be no disagreement between them, but just some extra insights. So what made me want to write the post and talk about this at all on the podcast is the fact that sustaining book sales is really tough, and also sustaining yourself, whether you're doing what I'm doing, which is releasing like a book a month, or if you're doing something totally different, just in the online world, it's a really hard thing to keep yourself from burnout and to keep yourself going. So both things are pretty difficult. But last year, I found myself in a situation that was incredibly frustrating to me, which is that I started out the year making, just under $9,000 in book sales. And I think my ad spend was under $2,000. So I made, walked away with a good, $6,000 to $7,000 in straight profits last January. And I just thought we're on the track up. We've got this upward trajectory. I'm going to start making, next month I'll break $10,000 a month and I'll just keep on moving up. And that didn't happen. Now, it's still totally a thing to be celebrated. I am still just in awe that I was able to do that after only a year of publishing Sweet Romance, that I could get to that income level. But it didn't just keep going up. I had a really rough year, and I feel like I'm just now recovering, which was part of what the break was about. But my income really just started dropping and then continued to drop throughout the year until it was, there were some months this year where I was making less than I was the year before, which was really sad to me. Again, I still had a continuous over 4-figure month, usually making around a minimum $2,000, but usually around $3,000, $4,000. But because of where I had been and where I was going, it felt like a big pushback. And that was pretty frustrating to me. So I do not want to complain in any way about those, especially if you're someone who's out there, you're like, I'm making $50, stop complaining. I totally get it. But my goal at the beginning of this, if you haven't been listening the whole time, was that my goal was to take over my husband's income because he was switching jobs. Now, we're no longer at the point where my income needs to be the primary income. He's doing a lot of stuff and working from home, which is fantastic. But I'm a really competitive person with myself, and I have a lot of drive and high goals. And once you see what's possible, it's really hard to go from making, $8,000 or whatever in a month to suddenly dropping back to like $2,000. You're like, what did I do wrong? And so, the thing is, you have to sustain book sales. They don't just keep on going. Unfortunately, we'd love to find that magic bullet where, whatever it is with traffic on your blog or selling books, where you just do the one thing and then it just keeps growing forever, but it doesn't. So how do you sustain book sales then if you want to keep on making income? The first thing that I did personally, so we're going to kind of track you through my journey that will hopefully help you as well and give you some takeaways. But the first thing I did was to examine why my sales were dropping. And here are the specific things that I found for me, and these may or may not apply to you. But the first mistake, I will say mistake, I'm going to call them mistakes. Not all of them were fully mistakes, but all together they were kind of missteps, I guess. The first thing was that I joined a multi-author series, which means it was a series that each book was written by a different author. They were all kind of standalone books tied together by a theme. And we each published one a month. I joined this series. It was with some other authors I really respect and still have a good relationship with. But it was writing a book that was not in line with my best-selling books. So I had been writing, I guess in July, I published a billionaire book. And I've talked about this before. If you look at creativewriting.com/150 or check out episode 150, I talk about what I did actually to make all this money and how writing to trend. And actually, you can listen to episode 174 as well for that. But I started writing billionaire books, which were a hot trend. And so from July on, I was publishing about a billionaire book every month or 2 months. And those were continuing to grow because that was a really hot trend at the time. So when I joined this multi-author series, it was putting out something that was not in my own series, and it was not filling in with that momentum that was happening with my own series. I also stopped running Facebook ads. I've been running Facebook ads, testing them. I bought a course on how to run them for authors, and it's sometimes hard to tell if these things are working, and I was doing several other things. And so I turned off the ads to see what was working, and spoiler alert, the ads were working. So turning those off was not helpful. I also stopped putting out books as frequently. As I said, things in our situation changed. And so I was able to take a little bit of a break from publishing so quickly, which, for some people, they might be like, oh, that's good. That's healthy for you. But I write fast and I love putting out new content. So putting out a book a month is actually no problem for me, and it doesn't feel unsustainable, but that's me. And we'll get more into what you can output later. But I stopped putting out books as frequently. I kind of took a break and was working on some other things. And then the hot trend I was writing cooled off. So I took a break from billionaire books right when the trend started to cool. So then when I came back with my final in that series, it didn't sell as well as the others, partially because I think I had sort of stopped the momentum on my series, but also because billionaires were starting to kind of fade. They're still selling, but they're not selling the way they were. And I know that because I can look at my own billionaire books and see that even though my subscribers grew, my influence and reach grew, with each billionaire book, I was making less money and selling less books. So then I also I finished that series out and then started writing in a series that was not as hot of a trend. So I was writing about finishing up a beach series that I had started, and people like beach books, but it wasn't necessarily a hot trend. And again, if you want to know more about the trends and all that, you can go back one episode where I talk about writing to market and writing to trend. So those were the things that really influenced my drop. But I also think there were some outside things that I can't control, which is the market got really crowded for clean romance. From the time I started until now, it has changed a lot, even in that like 18-month period. It's been 2 years since I published my first short story. My first book didn't come out for a few more months. And so the short story didn't really tell me anything about the market because it was just one very short thing that I had published. But it's kind of like I say 18 months to 2 years. That's why I use those differentials. But it's really changed a lot. There's a lot more people out there. There's a lot more competition. There are a lot more books being written. And so I think that had an effect as well. And I've talked to many authors who it was just a rough year for them all around. And advertising has become more and more important. Whereas when I first started, I was doing no Facebook or Amazon ads. That has really had to change. So there were some also, like there were the outside factors and then the things that I did. And so here's the thing. When it comes to sustaining sales, as I looked at those factors and the things that I saw were impacting me, you have to make some choices as an author of what you're going to do to sustain sales, because you can't just put books up and assume Amazon will sell them. Even if you have the right keywords, the right title, the right cover, that will work a little and to some degree, but you have to do some work as well. So you can rely on, here are the things you can do, rely on paid advertising, Facebook, Amazon, BookBub, Reddit even has advertising, etc. You can work on smart marketing, updating old books, finding new places to promote your books, growing your email list so that you find new readers who haven't read your books, or continuing to write books quickly to boost the backlist and the books you've already done. And I'm not really sure what else is in your control. There's going to be a lot of outside factors you can't control, such as everybody using ads or, a market getting really, really crowded. If your book gets great word of mouth reviews, that's not really something you can control. I mean, you can encourage your readers to tell friends. You can encourage, if you have a launch or street team, you can encourage those people to tell friends. But word of mouth is something that really does kind of happen on its own. So those are things you can't really control. And sometimes all three of those things may fail. The paid advertising, the smart marketing, and the writing more books, they may fail. Your books may not be connecting with readers. They may not be written in genres that are easily targeted. I hear from a lot of people who are struggling with sales and they're writing in, a genre that's just not super popular. There're just not a lot of people looking for those kinds of books. And a lot of people really are struggling in that area. It's going to be hard to sustain because there aren't that many people looking for that kind of book. The problem is that you can't actually stop doing everything or your book sales will stop. So if you stop doing anything active, your book sales will likely also stop. And that's a scary thought. It makes it feel a little bit like a hamster wheel you're on and you have to keep going. And that leads us into this idea of sustaining yourself and figuring out what you can do, because you do have to keep on doing things to sell books. I mean, this is really logical, right? This is almost like the physics of book sales. You have to do stuff to sell books, kind of like the object in motion. And that's about all I know about physics. So we're going to stop there before I say something that I don't know. So sustaining yourself. How do you do this? How do you keep selling books while you're keeping your sanity and your life, going? So if you want to sustain your sales, you have to figure out ways to get eyeballs on your books, but you also have to keep yourself sustained. So as I kind of mentioned before, for me, writing a book a month has become kind of my natural habitat, if you will. It's become my practice and something that I love. I'm an ideas person. My husband, sometimes we have these conversations and he's like, I don't understand your brain because I am full of ideas. I probably have maybe 20 books in my head, or maybe briefly have a paragraph or something in a Google Doc that I want to write, like 20. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. There might be more. I love starting projects. I love getting an idea for a new project that really gets my brain going. And so for me, if I am slower than a book a month, these ideas start backlogging and it feels a little bit like this weird pressure that needs to be released somehow. I write quickly and I write, especially in the genres I'm writing, I've kind of gotten a feel for how you write them and how to write them quickly. And I have kind of things in place now for editors and everything else to get them out that quickly. But I never thought I would do that. My first book took over a year to write. When I first started doing clean romance, the first book, which was my shortest, I think, or one of the shorter, took me 3 or 4 months to do. So I've gotten faster as I've gotten better. And then I think going faster has also made me better. It's kind of a thing that goes together. But my fastest written book was in 2 weeks. It has 120 something reviews and the average rating is 4.8 stars. So writing faster, side note, it does not mean poor writing. It can mean that. Not everybody should do this. This should not be your goal. I am not telling you this because this should be your goal. It should not, unless you also like writing that quickly. This is how it happened for me. But the problem is I can write a book a month, but the publishing and the marketing and all of those things take a little bit more work. Plus we've got the other things going on. I have the podcast, I have a weekly email. Oh, and I have 5 kids. That's also happening. And so then it becomes this thing. And whatever your situation is, you have your own things. You have your own schedule, your own book publishing schedule, your own other things in life and your family and all those things. And so this gets really overwhelming, and a lot of authors hate marketing. I actually really like it. I like it, but I love writing. I like marketing. I love writing, but a lot of authors hate marketing. And so it feels like an extra pressure. It's not just about the time, but the pressure things put on you. So if I had to do nothing else, I might put out 3 books a month or more. I don't know, if I didn't have to do any marketing or worry about how quickly I could get to my editor and all that kind of stuff. But you have to do marketing. You have to. And no, I don't know of a service you can pay to just do it for you. And if there is one like that, it's probably too good to be true, or they're scamming you. So the sad news might be for you that you're just going to have to market and you may not want to. But that's okay. My hope in this podcast is that you will learn to like marketing at least a little bit better. It'll feel more manageable because, again, let me go back to this. If you haven't heard this from me, I consider marketing for authors, what it really is connecting with those readers who want to read your books and become your super fans. Okay. That's really what we can say marketing is. If you boil it down to the bare bones, it's getting your book in front of the right readers who are going to be the right readers for your books. What we have to figure out in terms of sustainability is how to sell books and write books in a pace that is not going to make you hate writing and give up. And something I've noticed in, especially in the clean community of clean writers, that a lot of them are talking about how they're giving up. I've heard from, there was a goals post in one of the Facebook groups, like in December for, what are your goals for 2020? And what did you learn in 2019? And a lot of people said, I left my job and now I'm going back to it. And so a lot of people have found that it wasn't sustainable in the sales or maybe even in their life, which is for someone like me. I mean, I don't want to ever say it's good, like something that was hard for someone else. But in terms of like marketing and strategy, in some ways that is good for me. If the market got too crowded and it's going to start to thin out, and people like me who I'm like, oh, I'm just going to keep writing books forever. Basically, I'm playing a long game here. I'm still going to be around selling my books. So for you, I don't want you to lose the joy that you have in writing. I don't want you to lose things like important relationships in your life, or your sanity, because you are putting out too much. You're putting too much on your plate. You're not able to sustain it. But we also have to keep marketing and writing to sustain book sales. So I want to challenge you to think about sustainability. And if this were a drinking game, you guys would just be passed out, not even listening in terms of how many times I've said sustain or sustainability. I'm going to say it some more now. So I want to challenge you to think about that. So think about this. What are sustainable goals? For me, that $10,000 a month goal, it was not sustainable, and it's not right now either. Things are looking up. I've made some changes and I'm back on a consistent publishing schedule with a new series that's selling really well. But $10,000 a month is not sustainable. So don't make that your goal. Maybe in the back of your mind, you can have a crazy goal. Like, sure, that would be my goal if I could have it. But that's my crazy goal. $10,000 a month is not my realistic, sustainable goal. And then you need to think about, what are sustainable writing habits? So for me, writing a book a month is sustainable. In fact, I started a new pen name. I've talked about this on the show, but in August, I guess July 31st, I got the idea for a new young adult Urban Fantasy Academy series and partnered up with our friend Courtney Lott, who writes under the name E.C. Farrell. And we put out a book a month while I was still writing other books under the name Sullivan Gray and E.C. Farrell. And we got the idea, started it in August, put out a book for 3 months, and the series is complete. That's sustainable for me. That one was a little bit stressful because we weren't writing ahead of time. Like we put up the pre-orders, and like one of the books, I think we had to write in like 3 weeks, write and edit and publish in 3 weeks. So it was a little bit crazy. I would not do that again, but I can. And so you need to figure out, what are your limits? Maybe push yourself to see if you can find that upper limit, but not so far that you're going to hate what you're doing and you're going to have to quit. Okay, push it. See, challenge yourself, but what is sustainable over time, not just for a month? And then what are sustainable marketing habits? So if I am writing more than one book a month, which I can do and have done as I've been balancing the 2 pen names, but the marketing is really hard if I'm doing more than one book a month, especially in 2 genres, in terms of even just paying for some of the paid promotions and the advertising. Because with Amazon, you get paid a couple months later. You're not getting the money that month. And so it's a little bit hard to sometimes front that cash if you don't have a big, account or something that you're pulling from. So you need to think about, what are sustainable marketing habits for you? And this is going to look different for every single person. It's going to look different year to year. And so as we're going into January 2020, this is something really good to think about. It's not just, what are my goals? What are my sustainable goals? What are the sustainable goals for writing? What are the sustainable goals for marketing? Because you have to get down to, what is something you can actually do that's not going to make you hate writing or hate your life or fail at things in your life or miss big deadlines or things like that. So it's going to look completely different. Yours may not at all look like mine. And I actually haven't sat down fully and committed. I like to keep things loose. I like to think about what I want to do. And what I want to do is publish at least 12 books this year, but probably more. And so I am kind of trying to figure out what that's going to look like. And some of that is going to be based on what is selling. So if this series I'm doing right now in Clean Romance is continuing to do well, I cannot take a break from that. That's what I learned from last year. I can't say, oh, well, this series is doing really well, but I really want to write that vampire novel for young adult. Well, okay, I can do that, but I need to not do it right in the middle of my Clean Romance series. I need to not take a break if that series is continuing to sell really well. But again, then you have to think about your ultimate goals. So are my goals about making money or about just doing what I love? Mine are still more on the making money side because let me be honest, I love all the things I'm writing. So if I have to wait a couple months on a vampire book to write a Clean Romance, that's okay. I'm still writing and I still love it. Again, this is me. You may not want to write Clean Romance and vampire books because you're a little bit more normal than I am. That's fine. I'm a little bit off in my own place. Totally okay with that. I'm owning up to it. But I want to encourage you, don't do what I did, which was kind of stack up all these things and then burn out. And, there are also personal things that have happened for us and our family that I, can't really talk about on the show that just made it. It wasn't even that some of my writing goals weren't sustainable, but what's sustainable in terms of the season of life you're in. We've had some really hard family things going on. I lost an aunt who was close to me in December. So even if I hadn't already taken a break, I would have had to, because I went to Virginia to the funeral and spent time with my family plus holidays. So you need to think about these goals in the context of your actual life, like not the life just in that, your little writing space or whatever it is, but the season of life that you're in. How do those goals fit in? Because it's not sustainable. Like I can write a book a month. That's sustainable. It's not sustainable all the time, depending on the season of life that I'm in. So now that you have heard the word sustainable 1,000 times, I really want you guys to consider it. I hope that you've realized or kind of thought more about how this is important. And as you're writing your goals for 2020, think about what you can handle. I avoided saying sustainable, only to say it again at the end. So speaking of that, I am doing something new, which I'm really excited about. And I spent time thinking about if I could handle that this year. I'm going to get back to some training and teaching and workshops through creative writing. Now, this is how I actually started out the podcast, was I was writing courses and doing free trainings every month, and then took a break from that because I really wanted to focus on fiction, and that's going to be my primary focus, but I have made some space in my life to do more trainings, and here's what I've come up with. So in 2020, I'm going to be doing more workshops, and they're going to be paid workshops, not free workshops, once a month from February to November. So keeping off January, which I think is like a hangover month from December, and then December, which is just, a nightmare in a lot of ways, or it's a wonderful month. I'm sorry, December, you are a beautiful, wonderful snowflake of a month. You're just very busy. But I'm going to do one workshop a month. They're going to be $50 a piece, and they're going to focus on things like building your author platform and building your email list, writing to market, all of the sustainable, logical things that you need to learn to actually make money and succeed at doing this author thing. And they're going to be really fantastic. The reason that they're going to be paid, it's a couplefold. One, my time. For me, I do a lot of free content here on the podcast. There's a ton of resources I have on the blog. I have the free Facebook group. You can go to creativewriting.com/community to find that. But that's enough free content. And so these workshops, they do take a lot of time to prepare, and they're going to be a much deeper dive into the free content that I have, because I do talk about a lot of these topics on the blog, on the podcast. You can just listen to those. The thing though with money also is I found that not only does it pay me, which is great, but it invests you. So if you're talking about what's sustainable, I have found for me that courses and big giant things are really hard. I actually have courses I purchased that I forgot about. I was kind of going through and doing an inventory, and I was like, I forgot I even purchased that and never, ever once looked at it. And then when I looked at it, I was like, it's too overwhelming. I don't have time for this. And so I just closed it. So I have things I've paid for that I've never, ever done because I'm a learning junkie. But when you do pay for something, usually you actually are more invested in it, unlike me when I've bought too many things. But these workshops, they kind of avoid both of those problems. You're investing, but you're not investing so much money or so much time that it's overwhelming. $50 for most people is a good investment. And if it's going to help you sell more books, that's what these are designed to do, then it's a worthwhile investment. But it's also going to make you commit a little bit more to that time because you have put up some capital to get in there. Plus I get paid. Everybody wins. But what I'm going to also do is if you can just purchase each workshop individually, you can just purchase the ones that you're interested in. I'm going to be sharing information about those in the Facebook group and on my email list. But you can also join something that's new called the Creative Collective. And I'm going to be running a special on this in January. But even if you're listening and it's not January 2020, if it's not 2020, this is a moot point. If it's 2020, if it's not January, you can also purchase these. But in January, I'm doing a special. The Collective is like a membership, kind of like a membership light. So what you're going to get for the Creative Collective is you're actually going to get all of those, all of the workshops. So all 10 of those plus 2 bonus workshops. And they will likely all not be in January and December. They'll just be kind of through the year. They may be Q&A, office hours, hot seats. They're going to look a little bit different. And those will just be for the collective members. Those will not be advertised publicly. There will also be a private Facebook community just for the collective members. So if you guys love the creative writing community, which I feel like is like the best Facebook group around, I know I'm biased, but also I think it is, this will be a much smaller group made up of amazing people, and we'll be able to chat and have safety. You guys know that I run a tight ship with the Facebook groups. I keep things positive. I keep things really work on building a community that feels safe and good to ask questions and to talk freely. And then there's also going to be bonus resources. I have a ton of videos and trainings from different courses I built and then decided really not to sell because I have stopped liking that course model, but I will have a lot of information. So you're not going to be overwhelmed, but you're going to have a lot of resources, probably more than you need, and you can kind of pick and choose through those. So the collective is going to be a much better deal. The workshops, if you buy them individually, are going to be $50 for each workshop. But if you join the collective, it's going to be $35 per month. And yes, it's for 12 months, even though the trainings are February through November. The Facebook group is not going to close. So that's going to be open starting, now it's open. People aren't in there yet, but we have a few members, but it's not up and running, but it will be there. you're still going to get those extra trainings and also, the 2 bonus workshops. You can also do annual, and that's only going to be available during January. So the annual is going to be $300, which saves you $120 off of paying monthly, but that's only available in January. And the value, the workshops, all 10, it's a $500 value. The 2 bonus workshops is a $100 value. And then I don't know how to put a value on the Facebook groups, but basically you're getting a $600 value for $300 if you're paying annually, or the monthly, you're going to be getting the 12 workshops. You're saving money. My math is terrible on the fly. I should have written that down. I'm very excited about this. So if you need to take the next step, if you need some direction and you're ready to invest time and commitment and money, this is going to be fantastic for you. So if you want more information, please go to createifwriting.com/workshop, and that's going to give you more information and kind of a sampling. I've planned out the first 6 or 7 of the workshops. I may change the order. I really like it to do that, to not hedge myself in, but to allow some freedom, because once the collective members, if everybody in there, and I am going to base this on the collective members. So if you're a collective member and you're like, look, we need what you have down 4th as number 1, and I'm hearing that from everybody, then I'm going to go ahead and move that. So as a collective member, you're going to have a little bit more say so in that, as well as the 2 bonus trainings. I'm very excited to get back to teaching. It's something that I love, and actually went through a lot of the training programs at school for teaching the education department. So I'm very excited to get back to workshops. And even if you don't do those and you're like, man, I'd love to, I don't have money, that's fine. You're still going to get great free content here on the podcast and in the Facebook community. So if you want to get more information about all of the things, resources, tips, trainings every week, you can sign up for the Quick Fix, createifwriting.com/quick fix. You can join our free community at createifwriting.com/community, or you can check out the show notes for this episode at createifwriting.com/175. I want you guys to love what you do, and a part of that is sustainability and figuring out what that means for you. So now, armed with this information, I want you to go out and create content that you love to serve your people well.